Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, I bought a house specifically to avoid an HOA, but that didn't stop the neighborhood Karen from declaring war on my front door. It started with angry notes, but quickly turned into a $4,800 nightmare and a literal lien on my home to steal my property. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. I'm a single mom with 2 kids, and a few years back I bought the only thing I could afford in my area, a tired little fixer-upper on a corner lot that everyone else seemed to drive past like it was contagious, but it was mine. And the weird part is where it sits. So my lot is right on the edge of a newer subdivision that went up. That subdivision has an HOA. They have a big entrance sign with the neighborhood name and a list of community standards, which is basically a polite way of saying, don't be noticeable. My house predates all of that though. My property line is literally the boundary, and their HOA runs right up to my side yard and then stops. I knew that when I bought it, and the title company knew it, the county knew it, my deed paperwork and everything else was clear. There's a reason my monthly payment was doable. Nobody was collecting extra money from me for a pool I cannot use and a clubhouse I've never seen the inside of, so when I finally had enough time and energy to do something purely for happiness, I painted my front door a bright color. Not neon, just a cheerful bold color that made me happy every time I came home from work. The kids loved it, and it made the whole front of the house look less like a before photo. I spent a weekend doing it. Sanding, priming, painting, repainting because the first coat looked like it had been applied with regret. The kids helped pick out a welcome mat and insisted on a little pot with a plant they promised they would water. They watered it for about a week, then it became my plant. But 2 days later, I found a letter at my door. It was a notice of violation. It said that I was in violation of the HOA's exterior color guidelines, and I had 10 days to cure the violation before fines would be assessed. I stood there reading it twice because my brain kept trying to force it to make sense. My first thought was that someone misdelivered it to the wrong house. Then I looked up and saw a woman standing across the street on the HOA's side, arms crossed, watching me like she had just caught me shoplifting paint. She was the kind of retired person who treats time like an unlimited resource, an authority like a hobby, crisp haircut and tennis shoes that have never seen dirt. Sunglasses even though the sun was barely doing its job. She looked like she smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and righteous anger. When I glanced at her, she didn't wave, she just nodded once like, yeah, that's right, I did that. I walked over still holding the paper and said, hi, I think this is for someone else. I'm not in the HOA. She didn't even blink though. Yes, you are. I blinked. No, I'm not. I'm the HOA president, she said like that was a spell, and your home is in our community. I pointed down the street at the entrance sign like an idiot. My house is not in your subdivision. This property is actually older. She gave me a tight smile. It's been annexed. She said annexed like she had just declared it legally binding by saying it out loud. I stared at her. Annexed by who? By the board, she said. We brought your property into compliance. I just paused because my brain needed a second to process the audacity. You cannot just adopt my house. Her smile tightened even further. You should read your neighborhood bylaws. I held up the notice. I don't have any bylaws to follow. I got a mortgage. She did this little laugh like I was being cute. We will see. And then she walked away like the conversation was over. I went inside and did what every tired adult does when someone tries to rewrite reality. I pulled out a folder. I keep a folder of house papers because being a single mom teaches you real fast that if you don't keep track of documents, the universe will pick a random Thursday to punish you. Deed, survey, closing documents, everything. So yeah, my lot was clearly outside their recorded HOA boundary. It was not even close, not even ambiguous, not maybe. My lot number was not in their list. Their HOA declaration referenced the subdivision lots, and mine was not one of them, so I made copies. I highlighted the relevant parts. And by the way guys, if an HOA Karen confronted you like this and you are actually not part of the HOA neighborhood, what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new here, because I upload daily stories that you don't want to miss. Thank you so much. So I put everything in an envelope, and a neighbor, one of the nicer ones on the HOA side, had already pointed out which house was hers after that first notice, because apparently everyone in that subdivision knew who ran the neighborhood like it was a hobby. I walked to her house, rang the bell, and when she opened the door I said, here, this is for my closing paperwork. My property is not part of your HOA, please stop putting notices at my door. She took the envelope like it might stain her hands. I will review it. That should have been the end, but it was not the end. A week later I got another notice, and this time it was about improper storage of containers because my trash can was visible from the street on pickup day. Then another about unsightly items because my kids left their bikes on the porch for an afternoon, and then about non-compliant holiday decor because my kids put paper cutouts in the front window that were apparently too seasonal. They were construction paper ghosts. It was barely decor. It was "my children are proud of scissors" level. Every notice had the same format though: bolded violation, a deadline, and a threat of fines. At first I tried being polite. I emailed the HOA's generic email address with the subject line, "Not an HOA, please stop." I attached a deed snippet and a survey. I got back a one-line reply that could have been copied from a fortune cookie. It said, "Your property is subject to community standards." I then called the number on the HOA letter, but it went to voicemail. I left a message, and 2 days later I got a new notice. This one was about the unapproved color of my door again, like we were doing a greatest hits album. It started to feel less like a mistake and more like a fixation. And because life loves comedy, my kids started recognizing the paper as well. My youngest would see the edge of a taped letter and go, "Is that the mean lady mail again?" Yes it was. I took photos of every notice before I removed it. I saved every email, I wrote down dates, and I bought a cheap outdoor camera, not even for this originally. I just wanted one because the neighborhood had some petty theft issues, but it turned out to be a very good investment. Because the HOA president, who I started calling HOA Karen in my head because my brain needs shortcuts, did not stop. She escalated. She began doing slow drive-bys. I would be in my kitchen and see her car creep past. Sometimes she would stop and stare like she was reading the siding and taking it personally. Once I came home from work and she was standing on the sidewalk near my front yard with a clipboard, not even trying to hide it, full on crossing guard of conformity. I got out of my car and said, "Can I help you?" But she didn't even look up from her clipboard. "You can move your vehicle. It is too close to the curb." I laughed because I honestly thought she was joking. She looked up. "This is not funny. Your vehicle is obstructing the visual line of the street." I said, "I'm parked in my driveway." She made a face like I had tracked mud into a showroom. "You are angled. It's a driveway." I said, "It's literally angled." She wrote something down. I said, "You know, I'm not in your HOA, right? We have done this before." She looked at me like I'd forgotten to pay a membership fee at a gym. "You are benefiting from our community." I said, "I'm benefiting from your sidewalk?" "You use our roads," she snapped. I stared at her. "Public roads." She lifted her chin. "That's not the point." The point I realized was control. She couldn't stand that my house was visibly different, my door was different, and my yard was not approved according to her standards. My kids' stuff occasionally existed in the world, and worst of all, she couldn't find me into obedience because she didn't actually have the power to do so. So she tried to create it. Over the next couple months, the notices got even more absurd. Grass height, outdoor items, improperly displayed address numbers. My address numbers were the same numbers that had been there long enough for paint to fade, so the mail clearly didn't mind. I kept responding the same way though, short, calm, with attachments. "My property is not part of your HOA, please stop." Here's the deed excerpt again, here's the survey again. And one of the neighbors from the HOA side, an older guy who walked his dog past my place sometimes, started giving me looks that said, "I'm sorry." Eventually he stopped when I was outside and said quietly, "She's doing it again?" I said, "Again?" He glanced towards the HOA houses like someone might be listening. Couple years back she went after a family near the edge, said their fence was wrong, and then fines and collections. They paid to make it stop and moved not long after. My stomach dropped. Were they in the HOA? He shrugged. I assume so. She sure acted like they were. That was when it stopped being funny, because up until then this was just annoying paper and a lady with a clipboard, something you vent about and move on, but the idea that she had done something like this before and someone paid and left made it feel like a method, and then she made it financial. I got a letter in the mail from a collections company. It said that I owed $4,800 in unpaid HOA fines and administrative fees, and if I didn't pay they would pursue all remedies available. I read it 3 times. My hands started to shake. I'm not wealthy. I'm doing okay in the sense that the bills get paid and the kids have what they need, and I can occasionally buy name brand cereal, but I am not. Surprise, $4,800. Okay. So I called the collections number and explained, probably too fast, that I'm not part of any HOA, that this is wrong, and that I have paperwork and that the HOA president is harassing me. The person on the phone sounded bored, like they'd heard every version of "This is not mine." ever, "Ma'am, we have an account in your name with an outstanding balance. If you want to dispute it, you will need to provide documentation." I asked where to send it, and they gave me an email address. And it became obvious they were not interested in HOA politics, they just had a spreadsheet from their client and a script. Dispute it in writing or pay, so I emailed everything. The deed, survey, closing documents, copies of notices, my emails, a timeline. I attached a PDF so thick, it looked like I was applying for citizenship or something. Then I did what I should have done sooner. I checked the county records. I am not a real estate expert. I'm not even the kind of adult who knows the difference between a lien and a lien until it matters, but I do know how to use the county website to search my address, and there it was, a lien. It was not some magical HOA button they pressed, it showed an actual recorded document titled something like Claim of Lien, with my address and legal description typed in. It didn't mean it was valid though. It just meant someone had managed to record it. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen and felt that cold panic that goes straight through your chest. Because a lien is not just annoying, it's not just paper, it's something that can actually mess with your mortgage, your credit, and your ability to refinance and your ability to sell. It felt like someone had scribbled their name on my house, and it wasn't just harassment anymore, it felt like she was trying to take my house by paperwork. The kids were in the living room watching a show, laughing, and I was at the table trying not to cry because my brain immediately went to the worst case scenario. What if my lender freaks out? What if this becomes a mess when I need to refinance someday? And what if this gets tangled up with my escrow? What if I lose the home I fought so hard to buy because a retired woman with a clipboard decided she didn't like my door? I took a deep breath and did the only thing that ever works when you are outmatched. I called a professional. I found a local real estate attorney, and when I explained the situation there was a pause. The attorney said, "You're telling me they recorded a lien against your property even though your lot is not in the HOA?" "Yeah." "Do you have your deed in your survey?" "I have those." "I don't have their HOA declaration." "We can pull it," the attorney said. And then, in a tone I will never forget, "If your lot is not subject to their recorded declaration, this is gonna be a serious problem for them." That was the first time in months I felt something other than frustrated and scared. The attorney got to work fast. They pulled the HOA's recorded declaration and subdivision documents, and they pulled my deed and legal description. They compared everything, and then they called back and said, "You're correct. Your lot is explicitly excluded. Not only are you not part of the HOA, their recorded documents define the property subject to the association, and you are not in it." I said, "So how did they file a lien?" The attorney made a small sound, like a laugh with no humor. "Well, the county recorders generally record what is submitted if it meets format requirements. They don't verify the underlying truth. People can record all kinds of nonsense, that doesn't make it valid though." They drafted a cease and desist letter to the HOA and to the collections company, and it basically said, "My property is not subject to their covenants. The lien is wrongful, remove it, stop contacting me, stop claiming I owe fines, and if they keep going, we'll just pursue damages." The collections company backed off almost immediately once they got it. They emailed to confirm they were marking the account disputed and halting collection activity while they reviewed what the HOA had sent them. The HOA didn't back off. 2 days after the attorney's letter was delivered, certified mail, signature required, I got another notice taped to my door, but this one was special. This time it was not about trash cans or bikes, it said that I was in continued violation and the HOA intends to proceed with enforcement actions, including foreclosure, if compliance is not achieved. It threatened foreclosure in big scary letters, like they were trying to get me to panic and write a check without thinking. I then forwarded it to my attorney. I also saved the camera clip, and the camera caught the HOA president clearly walking up, looking straight at my door and taping the notice there like she was delivering a threat in broad daylight. My attorney's response was basically, "Okay, if they want to play, we play." Step 1 was getting the lien released. Step 2 was making sure this didn't keep happening. The attorney notified the HOA's management company. If you've never dealt with HOAs, sometimes there's a professional company handling admin stuff, and those people are usually the only adults in the room. The management company replied with something that basically translated to, "We process what the board tells us," which is polite corporate for "don't blame us." Step 3 was contacting the HOA board members directly. And yeah, it's actually amazing how quickly people become responsive when you include the phrase liability in a paragraph. Within a week, I got my first contact from someone other than Karen, an email from a board member asking for clarification. I replied with one PDF, my deed excerpt, my survey, the subdivision documents, and a timeline of notices. No essays, just facts, because Karen was loud, but she wasn't the only person who could get hurt by this. If the HOA got sued, the HOA's insurance might get dragged in, and dues could go up for everybody. Board members could get pulled into depositions. People might have to spend a Saturday answering questions instead of arguing about sprinkler schedules, and people hate that. The management company scheduled a board meeting. I only know because someone forwarded the notice to me. It was not meant for me, I'm not in the HOA, but at least one board member had apparently decided I was now part of the "Please help us stop Karen from setting money on fire" group. But I didn't go. I mean, I had kids, a job, and I didn't feel like donating my evening to a room full of people who were only just now discovering that paperwork has consequences. My attorney did something better. They requested records related to my property, any documents showing annexation, any board vote, any recorded amendment, any membership record, anything that justified enforcement. And here's the thing about made-up authority: it hates paperwork, because there was no annexation, there was not even a vote. There was no recorded amendment adding my lot, there was just Karen deciding in her own brain that my corner lot offended her and therefore belonged to her. When the HOA couldn't produce documents showing I was part of it, my attorney basically said, "Great, so you agree she recorded a lien without any basis." At that point, Karen apparently decided to stop pretending to be reasonable. I found a handwritten note shoved between my front door and the storm door. No stamp, no envelope, nothing. It was basically a middle school threat note, but from a grown woman. It said that I was undermining the community and that "you will regret making enemies." It was signed with her name like she was proud of it. I laughed for about 3 seconds, then I put it in a plastic sleeve like it was a rare baseball card, because nothing says I'm acting appropriately like leaving a signed threat on someone's door after your lawyer gets involved already. My attorney laughed too, in the way you laugh when something is so stupid it becomes useful. Then we filed suit. Not because I wanted drama, but because the lien needed consequences. A cease and desist wasn't enough anymore, and I was not gonna be the second family that paid just to make a bully go away. My attorney explained it in plain English. They recorded a false claim against my title that could cause real harm, and they'd been warned and kept going. The HOA board hired their own attorney. And I'm guessing that attorney asked them one simple question: is her property actually in the HOA? And because the board's tone changed very fast, like a group chat after someone realizes the screenshot got sent to the wrong person, the HOA tried to do what boards always do when they are cornered: quietly fix the problem without admitting any fault. Someone from the management company contacted my attorney and offered to release the lien as a courtesy. As a courtesy! It's like they were doing me a favor by undoing their own mess. My attorney's response was basically, "We are past courtesy. We want a settlement that reflects the harm and ensure this never happens again." And I backed that completely, because this was not just annoying mail or something. I had spent hours dealing with it. I had paid an attorney retainer, I had lost sleep, and there's a special kind of rage that hits when someone threatens your housing stability and you have kids asleep down the hall. Also, I was done being polite. The next few weeks were a weird mix of normal life and legal stuff in the background. I still packed lunches and did laundry and tried to keep my fixer-upper from inventing new problems, but behind the scenes my attorney was applying steady professional pressure. They requested HOA communications and records related to my property, they wanted internal instructions about enforcement, and they wanted the fine calculations, and they wanted to know who authorized what. And wouldn't you know it, a lot of it pointed straight at Karen. Surprise, surprise. She was the one issuing notices and she was the one pushing the management company. And by the way guys, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you enjoy these HOA stories, and please let me know where you are watching from today. She was the one pushing collections, she was the one who signed off on recording the lien. At some point the HOA's attorney probably had the same realization I did. This was not a misunderstanding, it was a pattern. Remember the neighbor who said she did this too before? That came up too, not as a dramatic "we found 10 victims", but as a quiet reminder that Karen didn't just wake up one day and accidentally chose chaos. People in neighborhoods talk, and they don't talk loudly until they see someone else willing to push back. A different neighbor messaged me privately that Karen once tried to find them for a kid's plastic playhouse being visible from the street. Another one said Karen demanded they repaint shutters because they were faded. It was petty, controlling stuff. The difference with me was that she couldn't legitimately find me at all, so she tried to manufacture membership like it was a craft project. Eventually, everyone wanted the same thing except Karen. For this to end, the HOA offered a settlement meeting through council. I asked my attorney, are they gonna try to force me into the HOA? The attorney said, no they can't and we won't let them, so I agreed. The results were very clear. The HOA released the recorded lien, the HOA agreed in writing that my property was not part of the HOA and never had been, and they sent written notice to the collections company that the alleged debt was invalid, and they paid my attorney's fees. They paid additional money for the damages and the mess they caused. From what my attorney explained, once a bogus lien is recorded and you've been warned and you keep doing it, it stops being an oops and starts being expensive. And Karen? Well, Karen was removed from the board, and that last part was not written in the settlement, as Karen must be removed, because you cannot usually dictate internal HOA politics like that, but the board was clearly done with her. They were terrified of her doing this again and dragging them right back into court. After my settlement money came through, I did the boring, responsible thing. I paid down some debt that had been hanging around since the early fixer-upper days, I fixed 2 things in the house that were constantly annoying me, and I replaced a broken section of fence so my dog would stop trying to explore the universe. Then I did the thing that made the whole situation feel like a win instead of just, I survived an unhinged retired woman with stationery. I opened college funds for the kids. And yeah guys, I gotta say, I'm proud of OP for fighting back against this HOA Karen. All is good that ends well, I guess. The next one is a malicious compliance story that is titled Teacher Denies Bathroom Privilege, Student Asserts His Dominance. For context, this happened in the early 90s, and at the time the teacher had been teaching for 30+ years. It was a rural area, so many of my friends' parents had also suffered through at least 1 year of primary school with this awful woman. I've seen a grown woman cry recounting memories of her experiences. She was really that bad. My 2nd grade teacher took pride in being a mean old idiot to her students. Wielding control over our tiny little bladders was something that gave her a particular satisfaction, it seems. One day during cursive lessons, this kid named Joseph asked to use the bathroom. She told him that he should have used the bathroom during morning recess and would have to wait until lunch. A little while later he started squirming in his seat and again asked to use the bathroom, this time with more urgency. At this point our teacher starts berating the kid by telling him he is a little baby for not holding his bladder like a big boy and suggesting that he should wear diapers. Joseph gets tired of her crap, stands up from his seat, stares her directly in the eye, and proceeds to unleash the most epic man-sized piss he could muster. Damn, that kid is indeed asserting dominance. As fate would have it, he was wearing those mesh material basketball shorts, so the pee just flowed unobstructed down his legs and pooled on the carpet beneath him. A wave of giggling spread through the classroom, which was basically the 2nd grade equivalent of a slow clap. Our teacher just stood there dumbfounded for a moment before grabbing Joseph by the arm and dragging him off to the principal's office. As they exited the room, Joseph glanced over his shoulder with a big grin on his face. A legend was born that day, and we all enjoyed our newfound bathroom privileges for the remainder of the school year. The teacher retired the following year, by the way. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled Leave My Leaves Alone. So my neighbor is a typical curmudgeonly old man. He loathed the fact that I don't rake my leaves, yay pollinators, and he tells anyone who will listen how much he hates it. Even the mailman said, wow, that guy does not like you. My leaves do not touch his yard at all, by the way. We are separated by a chain link fence and the wind cannot even blow them into his space. They have zero effect on his life. Yesterday, when I got home, all of my leaves that could be seen from his window had been raked into a pile around the corner of my house. Another neighbor said she saw him in my yard raking them up. Me, being quite curmudgeonly myself, waited until after dark, snuck out, and put all my leaves back where they belong. This morning, the old guy walked outside for his morning smoke, stopped, stared, and started cussing. It was glorious. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.